Imagine a story so old that it was passed down by word of mouth long before it was ever written down. A story of monsters, warriors, revenge, and one guy who basically decides, yeah, I'll fight that thing with my bare hands. That's Beowulf. And here's the crazy part. This story didn't just entertain medieval listeners, it also caught the attention of a young college student named J.R.R. Tolkien. Yes, that Tolkien, the guy who would later write The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. He actually studied and translated Beowulf, and you can absolutely see some of those ingredients later on. Monsters, heroism, fate, and the feeling that something ancient and dangerous is always lurking just beyond the firelight. Beowulf is both the title and main character of an ancient heroic epic, the oldest known epic story composed in the English language. It tells the story of a warrior from Geatland in what is now southern Sweden, who comes to the aid of King Hrothgar of Denmark, whose great hall is being terrorized night after night by a hideous man-eating ogre named Grendel. The poem itself is probably a mixture of older Scandinavian legends woven together by an unknown author sometime around the 900s AD. And honestly, for a story that old, this thing still goes hard. And underneath all the monster fighting, this poem is also about something deeper: fame, mortality, and what happens when even the greatest hero gets old. Now, let's walk through the story, because this one gets wild pretty quickly. Let's dig in. Hrothgar, king of the Danes, and his army are very powerful and successful in war. One day, Hrothgar builds a large mead hall, or royal gathering hall, named Freewalt for his warriors to stay in and celebrate. Mead is an alcoholic drink made from fermented honey, and Hrothgar is very pleased to have a place to feast, boast, and party with his most loyal subjects. After they finish it, the guys in the hall celebrate like crazy. Meanwhile, Grendel, a huge and hideous ogre-like monster, hears all these guys partying and becomes hatefully jealous. The poem even links Grendel to the cursed line of Cain, giving him this dark biblical shadow on top of just being terrifying. So one night, he goes to Freewalt and kills 30 of Hrothgar's men. Then for the next 12 years, Hrothgar is basically trapped by the monster Grendel. Hrothgar has no idea how to beat him, and no one is able to enjoy life anymore in Freewalt. Then, Beowulf, a powerful warrior from Geatland in what is now southern Sweden, hears about the monster. Long ago, Hrothgar had helped protect Beowulf's father during a deadly feud, so Beowulf hopes to return the favor and, if we're being honest, build up his own reputation too. Because in this world, being brave was great, but being remembered was even better. So Beowulf gets 14 of his buddies from Geatland to come with him to slay Grendel. Beowulf goes to Hrothgar's hall and is pretty arrogant about how easily he can kill the big ogre. One of Hrothgar's men, a loudmouth named Unferth, insults Beowulf by saying he isn't the great fighter he thinks he is. Beowulf gets mad, fires back, and the two are basically about ready to rumble. To calm things down, King Hrothgar welcomes Beowulf and basically says, "If you pull this off, you're not leaving here empty-handed." Beowulf, partly to repay Hrothgar for helping his father and partly to earn glory and reward, accepts the challenge. Beowulf and his men shack up for the night in Freewalt, knowing that Grendel will eventually show up. He does, and kills one of Beowulf's men. Beowulf, with the strength of 30 men, starts fighting the ogre with his bare hands. Now the great room boomed. Clang and clatter shattered the night silence. Beowulf and Grendel lurched to and fro in their deathly tug-of-war. Tables and mead benches were overturned. Grendel roared and snarled. And in the outbuildings, Danes woke and listened in the darkness. When the Geats saw that Grendel could not escape Beowulf's grip, they surrounded him and slashed at him with their swords. Freewalt flashed with battle lights. Those warriors did not know that no kind of weapon, not even the finest iron on earth, could wound their enemy. His skin was like old rind, tough and almost hard. He had woven a secret spell against every kind of battle blade. Now Beowulf twisted Grendel's right arm, behind his neck. He locked it and turned it. Slowly he turned it, putting terrible pressure on Grendel's shoulder. The monster bellowed and dropped to one knee. He jerked, and his whole body shuddered and trembled. With superhuman strength, he jerked again. He tried to escape Beowulf's grip. He jerked, and all at once, his right shoulder ripped. A ghastly tearing of muscle and sinew and flesh, a spurting of hot blood. The monster's arm came apart from his body. Grendel howled. He staggered away from Beowulf and reeled out of the hall. The fatally wounded Grendel rushes back to his dark lair in the swamp and eventually dies of his wounds. Everyone in Hrothgar's kingdom is thrilled, and they hold a huge celebration in honor of Beowulf. Grendel's arm is hung like a trophy in Heorot. King Hrothgar thanks Beowulf and rewards him generously for a job well done. They feast, celebrate, and enjoy what they think will be the first peaceful night in 12 years. But not so fast. Meanwhile, Grendel's mother is extremely irritated about the death of her son and wants revenge. She goes to Heorot one night, sees her son's arm mounted there, gets crazily angry, and kills one of Hrothgar's closest and most trusted advisors. And here's the key detail. Beowulf isn't actually sleeping in the hall that night. By the time he is called back, Grendel's mother has already attacked and vanished into the darkness. Beowulf, now really angry, gathers together his army buddies and goes with King Hrothgar to the swamp where Grendel's mother lives to rescue what they can and kill the monster. When Beowulf, Hrothgar, and the soldiers reach the swamp, the place is straight up nightmare fuel. Blood in the water, weird creatures around the edges, and every sign that something awful lives down there. Beowulf decides to dive into the swamp to hunt down Grendel's mother. Before he does, however, Unferth, yes, the same guy who was mouthing off earlier, gives Beowulf his prized sword named Hrunting. Beowulf dives into the swamp. Near the bottom, Grendel's mother grabs the warrior and hauls him down into her underwater cave. Mighty though Hrunting is, it cannot pierce the ogre's tough skin. Beowulf threw the monster to the ground, but then she tripped him, held him in a fearsome clinch, and drew a dagger. Beowulf could not throw her off. Then Grendel's mother stabbed at Beowulf's heart. She stabbed again, but the cunning links of chainmail held firm and guarded Beowulf. His corselet saved him. Now the Geat warrior sprang to his feet. He saw a sword, massive and double-edged, made by giants, lying in one corner of the chamber. It was so huge that only he, of all men, could have handled it. Beowulf ran across the floor, gripped the ring hilt, and swung the ornamented sword. He struck Grendel's mother as she lumbered towards him. The blade slashed through her neck, smashed the vertebrae. The monster moaned and fell dead at his feet. After Grendel's mother dies, the cavern seems to brighten with a strange, almost holy light. There, Beowulf sees Grendel's dead body and a huge amount of treasure. Beowulf cuts Grendel's head off to take back to Heorot. This causes the giant sword to melt to its hilt. Beowulf returns to the surface carrying Grendel's head and the hilt of the sword, but leaving the treasure behind. Back at Heorot, everyone is thrilled, and they have another feast. Beowulf boasts about his successes, and Hrothgar gives him a serious warning about becoming too proud and too cocky. Again, for a job well done, King Hrothgar gives Beowulf more treasure and reward. Then Beowulf goes home to Geatland with his buddies and says goodbye to all the people in Denmark. Back at home, Beowulf meets with his king, King Hygelac, and tells him about the monsters, Grendel and his mother. Many years later, Beowulf eventually becomes king of the Geats and rules for 50 years. Then one night, some guy steals a decorated cup from a fierce dragon. The dragon gets furious because it had been guarding the treasure for over 300 years and goes on a fire-breathing rampage, burning homes throughout the countryside. One of the places the angry dragon burns is Beowulf's own hall. So Beowulf grabs Negling, his favorite sword, and goes to the dragon's cave to get revenge and kill it. But this is not young, invincible, rip-your-arm-off Beowulf anymore. He's old now. He's still brave, he's still dangerous, but he's not the same beast he used to be. The dragon attacks, and the fight goes badly. The dragon bites Beowulf in the neck, sending poison throughout his body. Then Wiglaf, Beowulf's young protege and loyal warrior, comes to the rescue while the rest of Beowulf's men panic and run. The dragon welcomed Wiglaf with a blast of flame that set fire to his shield. The young warrior sweltered and crouched behind Beowulf's huge iron shield. As the dragon wheeled, dragging its monstrous body, Beowulf stood up and crashed Negling against its head. The sword point stuck in its skull. Then the serpent writhed and bucked, and Negling was not strong enough. It bent and it snapped. Beowulf stared in dismay at his old gray-hued sword, and at once the dragon lunged forward. It gripped Beowulf's neck between its sharp teeth. The old king was bathed in blood. It poured out of his arteries and veins. Quickly, Wiglaf, took 3 strides and sank his sword into the dragon's belly. He buried it up to the hilt. The dragon gasped and let go of Beowulf's neck, and at once the flames began to abate. Then Beowulf fumbled for the deadly knife fastened to his corselet. He closed his eyes and swayed. Then he launched himself forward, fell against the dragon, and slit its throat. Sounds like a definite Viking story. The serpent gurgled on its own blood. It jerked and shuddered. It lay still. Beowulf was hurt badly from the poisonous bite. On his deathbed, Beowulf asks Wiglaf to bring him some of the dragon's treasure so he can see what he has won for his people before he dies. He also asks that a great burial mound be built in his honor so sailors will see it from the sea and remember his name. Then Beowulf dies. Wiglaf absolutely unloads on the rest of the warriors because they were cowards and ran away when they saw the dragon. Then Wiglaf tells everyone that Beowulf is dead, and the people are terrified that enemies will now attack, now that their great king can no longer protect them. So Wiglaf and the Geats carry out Beowulf's final wishes. They burn his body on a great funeral pyre, then raise a huge burial mound high above the sea and bury the dragon's treasure there with him. And that's how Beowulf ends. Not just with a monster fight, but with the death of a hero. And that's really what makes the story last. Because Beowulf isn't just about strength, it's about glory, about memory, about getting old, about the fact that even the greatest warrior in the world cannot fight forever. And somehow, that makes this 1,000-year-old monster story feel weirdly human. This is Have to Know History. History you just have to know. Thanks for being here.